actually provide dash dash seed to generate seed data as well. Second way is second artisan command is specific to execute the seed data. PHP artisan db seed. We hit the enter, seeding database has been completed, and now we should see some data into the database. So right now we have only database seeder, but you can actually create more seeders into the seeders folder. For this, you need to execute PHP artisan make seeder, and you need to provide this seeder name. Let's call this post seeder. We hit the enter. The post seeder was created. We can open this and have a look. The syntax obviously is very similar to database seeder, and we can write creating posts right here on the following area. If we want to use other seeders inside the main seeder, which is the database seeder, we can actually do the following. So right here in this run method, we can do this call and providing the other seeder name. So alongside with the code what we have written here to create categories and posts, it will also execute the post seeder. Let me delete this. However, if you want to execute a specific seeder from the command line, you need to execute PHP artisan db seed -- class to be post seeder. We hit the enter, seeding database has been completed, but because our post seeder run method is empty, nothing actually happened. So I just wanted to show to you how you can create a different seeder class, how you can call this in the database seeder, or how you can execute the terminal command to execute the specific seeder. But I'm going to delete the post seeder because I have every seeding code in my database seeder. That's pretty cool. Now, the seeder has been completed, and now we are going to have a look in the database. PHP artisan tinker. You know what? I'm going to leave always tinker open, and I'm going to open new terminal whenever I need to work with the artisan. Okay, we can even give names. Let's expand this. So this is a tinker. We can give it name tinker. I'm going to give it name with server, and this is for artisan. Okay, awesome. So we are in the tinker, and let me execute app models post get. We hit the enter, and now this returns 100 posts, as you see. So we see the following posts, and the last one has ID 100, so we have 100 posts in the database. We see the image URL. We can open this in the browser. Oops, that was open in my different window, but actually it is not working. There's some issue in the DNS. Anyway, okay, no problem. It is broken, but this is not a big deal. So we have title, we have slug, we have content, category ID, user ID, and so on. So the other post has category ID 4 because we are assigning category ID in a random order. Okay, cool. However, what will happen if we actually execute the seeder before we have any user in the database? So if we have a look in the post factory, we are assigning user ID number 1 to all posts. But if we don't have user into the database, then this is gonna throw an error. So what we can do, and what we should probably do, is create a user before doing anything. So like user factory create, and we can provide like this. So that can be test@example.com, and that can be test user, as it was basically previously, test user. Okay, let's scroll up, duplicate the post, and use this user model. Okay, cool. That's for safety. Now we're going to execute. So this is tinker. Now let's go into artisan, and I'm going to execute PHP artisan migrate, but I'm going to call fresh, which means drop all the tables and reapply all the migrations, and -- seed as well. Apply seed data as well. Now, this is what it did. It dropped everything, reapplied migrations. It created that user, test user, and then seeding has been completed as well. Now, if we check the number of users into the database, we're going to see that we have only one user, test user, and that user is actually that was created from here. And this is pretty cool. Now we're going to output categories on the dashboard page. But because we actually reset the database, we executed PHP artisan migrate fresh, now I'm logged out and I have to re-authenticate. I have to re-authenticate using one of the users, which is already created. If we check the database seeder, we can see the following user, and I think the password is simply password. So we can also check user factory. What is the password? The password is actually password. So we can use test@example.com with password, hit the enter, and we are inside the system. Okay, cool. Now we're going to output right here. I want to output categories, all categories what I have in my database, and then I'm going to show posts, and I'm going to also implement filtering posts by categories. Okay, so I want to spend as less time on design as possible. So for this, I'm going to use Flowbyte, which is Tailwind CSS component library, and I'm going to search for tabs. So this is it. Let's scroll down below. I want to just choose one of the versions. For categories, I'm going to stick with this one. I'm going to copy that, and let's close everything, and we are going to open dashboard blade PHP. So we have the following header here, which is this part, and I don't want this, so I'm going to actually remove that. And then we have the following area, you are logged in. So I'm going to put right here, instead of you are logged in, I'm going to put the tabs information here. Let's format the document. We're going to save that. And here we see the tabs. Let me put this in the center, and then I'm going to output all the categories right there. So we have this flex wrap. Okay, maybe we need to give this margin X auto. We're going to save that. No, this is not in the center. Or maybe let's just give it justify center. We save that. Okay, now this is in the center. So instead of this tab 1, tab 2, tab 3, and so on, we're going to output the categories, what we have in the database. So how we're going to do this? First, let's understand from where this page is rendering, the dashboard blade PHP. For this, we need to go into roles, web PHP, and have a look. So that is rendered from the following area when we access /dashboard. So this is the place which handles the rendering of the dashboard page. So I'm going to change this, and I'm going to create new controller to render that, and I'm going to call this post controller. So let's open terminal, let's go into artisan, and I'm going to execute PHP artisan make controller. If you want to see all the options that make controller supports, you can provide --help right here, and it's going to give you the full list of options that is supported in this make controller. So right now we know what we need to do, so we're going to execute post controller. Optionally, we can provide to this post controller --resource as well. --resource is a special flag based on which Laravel and Artisan will generate the controller with predefined methods already inside there. Without --resource, it is going to simply generate the post controller, which is going to be empty controller. Only class will be there. Okay, let's try this. We're going to hit the enter, post controller was created, and look at this. So it is an empty class generated inside app HTTP controllers. Okay, let me delete this. And now let's generate this again. In this case, let's provide --resource, and we hit the enter. Let's have a look. It generated the following controller with 7 methods. Index to show a listing of all the posts, create to show the form for single post. We have store to save a post, show to show a single post, edit to show a form for editing of a post, and we have update, and we have destroy as well. And pay attention, right here we have string ID. So we are accepting the parameters to show a single post or to edit a single post as a string ID. Now I'm going to delete this post controller again, and I'm going to regenerate this third time. In this case, I'm going to generate dash dash model to be post. So I'm generating the post controller as a resource controller for model post. We hit the enter, it was generated. Let's open, let's have a look. And now if we scroll down below right here, instead of string ID, we see post. That post is a model, app models post. And right here, we're already accepting an instance of the post instead of the ID. That's pretty cool and that's awesome. Now let's open web.php and we're going to change this. So instead of this closure function, I'm going to use post controller here, class, and the method is index, which should render all the posts. And I'm going to leave this URL /dashboard at the moment. Let's go into index. And for now, I'm going to return view dashboard. I'm still rendering dashboard from here. So if I have a look in the browser, refresh it, the result is not changed. I'm still rendering the same view. However, now I want to select categories and pass it into the dashboard. So what should I do? Let's execute category. Now I'm using Eloquent model. Category, which is a model, get. All right. And that category needs to be actually imported. Just like we have app models post here, we need category. We hit the enter. So that was selected and we can assign into categories. And we need to pass that data into the view. How to pass that data? There are two ways. One is to provide compact function right here and provide the variable name we want to pass. So in this case, we have only one variable inside this function we want to pass into dashboard, and this is called categories. So we are passing categories array into the dashboard. You can provide right here, comma, another variable, and so on, if you want so. However, the second way is to use an arrow function right here, not the arrow function, sorry, associative array here. Categories correspond to categories. Now, if we open this dashboard, we can access categories array. Okay, before I iterate over this array and display some information, I haven't mentioned two important functions. One of them is dump to print the information, like we want to print categories, let's say. So I'm going to save this, refresh, and here we see the categories. And this is Eloquent collection. Laravel has predefined collection classes there, and one of them is Eloquent collection, and it gives us the following object, instance of the collection class. It has items there, 6 items. Each item is actually instance of app models category. These are the categories what we have in the database. If we expand each of the category, we're going to see the data, such as inside the attributes, we see ID, name, created date, and updated date of that category. Okay. However, we see that the categories are printed, but the code execution continues, and down below we see the form. Instead of dump, if we use dd, which stands for dump and die, we save that, refresh, and we see that as soon as it prints something, it actually stops the code execution. So we don't see anything down below. We don't see the dashboard and the layout. So you can use whichever you want based on your case and scenario. Okay. We selected categories. We're passing the categories into dashboard. Now, how to accept that? How to print that? How to iterate over that? And now we have to introduce directives. Directives are special keywords that is available inside Blade template, and they provide certain tasks. Directives can be used for iteration, for conditionals, and for many other things. As an example, so we have here tab 1, tab 2, and so on. And as we see, if we refresh the page, as we see tab 1 and tab 2, so tab 1 is active, tab 2 is not active, and we need like both cases depending on which category is actually clicked. So let's leave these two, and then down below, so we can delete this tab 4 and tab 5, which is actually not allowed. We save, refresh, we see tab 1, 2, and 3, and I'm going to put this tab 3 inside the loop to iterate the categories. So I'm going to introduce for each directive. For each directive iterates over the given variable. In this case, categories is category. All right, now we have this category, which is an instance of Eloquent model, and I can use right here in between these for each opening and closing directives to output some information. So as an example, I can output the category name right here in between the opening and closing A tags. How to output certain information in Blade? We have to use double curly braces. So we have opening curly braces twice and closing curly braces twice, and we use category as an object and then its property name as an example to output the information. So I save that, refresh the page, and we see tab 1 and 2, which is actually hard coded right here. But then we have okay, I have a typo here, technology, health, science, sports, politics, entertainment, and so on. Let me quickly fix this technology, database, Cedar, and we can have a look, technology right here, which is the first category actually. So we're going to go into Tinker and C equals up models category. We're going to call first. So this is technology. So we're going to change C name equals technology. I'm not native, sorry. Technology. And then we execute C save. Now that should be saved in the database. If I refresh it, I see technology right here. Okay, let's collapse this. Let's go into dashboard Blade. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to add one more LI like we have here. That's going to be for all categories. So here I need all. I save it. So all, technology, health, and so on, and all by default will be selected. So the following classes will be active for all. We can actually close that, delete that, and paste the following here. So all is active. However, if we keep clicking on this, then it should change the URL as well and filter the posts by certain category. Okay, let's reduce the padding because I think it is too much. Padding Y12. Let's reduce this into padding Y4. Okay, not bad. And I'm going to reduce it right here as well, maybe padding 4 here. And maybe we can reduce padding on here as well. Let's find padding Y here and here. Instead of padding Y3, let's change this into 2. Okay, nice. Okay, now let's try to output posts. So just below the categories, which is right here, we need another section to output the posts. And I'm going to actually duplicate the following element, or maybe I should duplicate this one. Okay, now I see 2 cards, and I'm going to give this one margin top 8. So we create some space in between the categories and posts. And instead of this UL right here, I need to display it slightly different way. But first, we have to actually select and pass the posts. Let me actually close this database, Cedar, controller, and we need this post controller. I'm going to put this on the first position because this is the important file I'm going to work on. So we have posts equals post. We hit the enter. We are going to call get to select all the posts. Now we take the posts and we're going to pass posts right here. However, if we want to order posts by created it in descending order, which means that the latest post to be at the top, we're going to call order by. We can also use latest, by the way, which will use the created at for ordering. One of the ways to use latest. Another way is to use typical order by operator and provide created at. This means in ascending order, and if we provide desk here, this means in descending order. Okay. Now we're passing the post into dashboard. Now let's open the dashboard, and we're going to iterate over posts right here and render them. Posts, post as post, and we need now some sort of template to output the post information. Let's go into Flowbyte and find a post. Is there something like this? New post. Okay, let's search for card. Maybe there will be something similar to posts inside card section. Okay, that's actually pretty cool. I want something like this. Read more. Okay, excellent. Maybe with an image. Where is with an image? Okay, I don't see a version with an image. I see like this, but I want a different layout. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna actually copy the following and paste here. We need to format the code. Let me actually save this, and we're gonna have a look. Now we're gonna see 100 posts right here because we have actually 100 posts in the database, and this is actually repeated 100 times. All right. However, there are a few things I want to adjust. First is that I think we don't need these classes here at all. Let's just give it margin top, and we also can give it this text gray 900 to that, and remove that part. Format document, save it. Okay, that's nice. Now let's have a look. What do we have? Max width small. We can remove this. Let it be on a full width. Okay, like this. I want to use an image as well. Actually, this is the image, but it was not copied as a full version. So I'm going to copy image address, and I'm going to put that image right here. Now let's see. Okay, this is not ideal how I want, but I'm going to adjust this. So this is an image. Let me take out this. This is my post, and I'm going to put that image on the right side. So this is div, this is image, and let's give the following div flex. Now they should be side by side. However, this also needs some restriction in terms of width. Like the class, I can provide width to be, let it be like 36 maybe, 30, and let's give it also height to be 36. Okay, the image is actually rounded at the top, which is not what I want. I want rounded right large, the right side to be rounded. Let's give this one flex 1 to stretch fully. Okay, not bad. And we're going to increase that actually. So we need 48 maybe here and 48 here. Let's see, or I think ideal will be to add those classes to image itself, and let's give it also object cover. So let me remove the class from here. Let's save it and have a look. I think this is nice. And let's give it margin bottom 8. Now we have multiple posts right here. The only thing I feel we need to add is to actually shrink the width. I don't like such a large width. If I zoom out, then it is kind of shrinked, but I want to shrink it even more. So instead of max width 7XL, maybe we can give it 5XL, maybe even 3XL. Okay, not bad. So we have categories here, and we have then posts coming up. Now let's fill that information actually through the post variable, such as title. So right here inside this h5, we are going to output post title. Inside here, inside the following paragraph, actually this should not be paragraph. I'm going to change this into div, and like this. And I'm going to output right here post content. Okay, so we see post title, post content, and it changes for every post as you see. The image is the same, image is hard-coded, and we're going to come back to this. At the moment, the images are kind of broken in the database. So we can try to output that, but they are actually broken. So this is for read more. Let's use right here double curly braces and output post image, but we're going to see that they are actually broken. So we can inspect it, open in a new tab. Yeah, they are definitely broken. Okay, anyway, we can leave the image to be hard-coded, and we will come back to this when we actually implement uploading images, but for now, it is hard-coded and not actually really bad. However, we want the image to have like the full height, something like this. So let's give it also h full. Okay, that's pretty cool. We have object cover, and that is nicely aligned. And I'm going to also reduce the content. So for this, I'm going to use str facade right here. Scroll down below, find the str facade. Illuminate support. Yeah, that's it. str. And we're going to use words. How many words I want to output? That's a helper function. And let's say I want to output 15 words. I'm going to save that. And now I see only 15 words outputted there. Maybe we can increase this into 20. I think that's going to be enough. Whoops, what I did. Oh, I deleted the parentheses mistakenly. Okay, now this is looking nice. Okay, however, we are displaying 100 posts at the same time, which is not ideal, so we want to implement pagination. Now, let's go into post controller, and instead of calling get right here on posts, we're going to call paginate. Optionally, inside the paginate method, we can provide how many items we want to display per page. By default, this is 15, but we can set this into 5 as an example. Now, if we go in the browser already and refresh it, we're going to see already result. So we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 posts, and nothing has been changed inside the dashboard. So we are still accepting posts in the following way. However, there is one difference. If we take these posts and print that, and actually stop the execution using dd, refresh it, we're going to see that the post actually is an instance of length-aware paginator. However, this also implements a collection, and that's why we are able to iterate over the post, which is actually an instance of this length-aware paginator. However, there are few more things available on the posts variable that is not available on typical collection. For example, for pagination, we can actually do the following. So posts, links, we're going to save that, refresh the page. However, we need to remove this dd, save, refresh it, and down below we see the following pagination links. And we see also the following information showing 1 to 5 of 100 results, and we are on the first page, so the first page is actually kind of active. And look at this. So we navigate, and in the URL it also displays the page 5, and we see the results are changing right here, that everything actually this works out of the box. So we don't actually need to do anything at all. If you want to customize how many links you want to be displayed before and after current active pages, like 10 is active at the moment, and we see 3 on the left, 3 on the right. So then on this posts variable, we can use on each side, and we can provide 1 or whatever number you want. So if I save this and refresh it, now we're going to see only one number is before 10 and one number is after 10. And I think that's better, because now the pagination size is slightly smaller. If you want to customize the pagination styling right here, what we have, then we are going to open terminal and we're going to execute PHP artisan vendor publish, and we have to provide -- tag to be Laravel pagination. We hit the enter and a couple of assets files were published. And look at this, copying directory from vendor, Laravel, framework, source, illuminate, pagination, resources views into our project, which is resources views vendor pagination. Now let's have a look under resources views, vendor, and pagination. Look at this. So we have pagination for different versions, Bootstrap 4, 5, default blade. We have also semantic UI, simple Bootstrap 4, simple Bootstrap 5, and we see also simple default and simple Tailwind. We also have simple pagination capabilities, and to apply simple pagination we need to open the controller, and instead of paginate right here we need simple paginate. So we save this and have a look in the browser, and we see only previous and next icons. So in one case it might be this what you actually want, so it depends on your choice. So I'm going to actually stick with this simple paginate. However, I want to show you how you can customize the pagination. So I'm going to get back to this, and then let's have a look inside resources, views, vendor, and pagination. So we can open this default blade, and let me actually delete everything and just write one. So we save it, refresh it. Okay, the default one is not what it is using. It is actually using the version which is Tailwind Blade PHP. So we're going to delete everything, save, and now the pagination is gone because we actually modified the Tailwind version. So if you want to customize, this is the place where you need to have a look and change how the styles or how you are outputting. For example, if you want to actually close, if we open the 4th page as an example, or 6th page, so if you want only 1 to be displayed and not 2, or only 20 to be displayed and not 19, so then you need to have a look here in the following area. However, you can also create your own custom pagination blade file and not publish anything, and whenever you go into dashboard and whenever you provide links right here, you can provide your own blade file, such as in our case that is going to be vendor pagination, let's say default blade PHP. So vendor.pagination.default. So I'm going to save this and we have a look. And look at this. So this is the default, basically no styling at all. So this is default. We can provide Bootstrap -5 as well. Of course, it's not going to have any styles, but you get the idea. So we're going to remove this completely. Okay, not this one. So we're going to stick with this Tailwind blade. However, you can customize this as you want. So I'm not going to customize it. However, I wanted this to show to you. I'm going to go with this simple paginate because I actually like this. Refresh it. Okay, that's pretty cool. Laravel's Blade template engine is actually full of directives. The single only directive what we have used so far was actually the for each directive. Now, if we have a look in the documentation, one of them is if, and that works in the following way. So if @ if the directive name, and then we provide the condition, and if that condition is true, then the following code will be rendered, else if this will be rendered, else, and finally we have this end if. So we have unless, which is opposite of if. We have is set and empty to check the existence of a record or data inside the record. We have auth and guest as well. The user is authenticated, the user is not authenticated, and so on. So I'm not going to talk about every single directive which is available right here. Instead, I really encourage you to have a look in the documentation. Just read it, understand what directives are there, are available, and then whenever you need them, you know where to find more information about the directives. However, I'm going to talk about this for else. This is a pretty interesting one, and I'm going to use this right here in the following area. So right now, I'm going to truncate the database. So I'm going to execute. Let me delete, close all the files. I'm going to leave the dashboard, post controller, and web. Okay, let's execute PHP artisan migrate. Actually, I'm going to use database seeder, and I'm going to create the user, but don't seed categories and posts. So I'm going to comment out this part. So PHP artisan migrate fresh -- seed. Okay, now we need to refresh. I need to authenticate. And on the home page, look at this. So I don't see any categories. I don't see any posts. And this is interesting. However, I expect kind of a different result. If we go in the dashboard, right here, instead of for each, I'm going to change this into for else. And then we have right here, we have else case. And finally, we have end for else. And inside the else and end for else, this is the place where we're going to output the blank text. No posts were found. So I save this. Cannot format code with syntax errors. What syntax error do we have? I don't see any syntax errors. However, it keeps telling me that we have syntax errors. Okay, maybe I did something wrong. Let's undo this. I don't want syntax errors, and let's have a look. Format document. Now it was nicely formatted. So what is the issue? For else. And finally, we have end for else. End for else. Oops. Like this. So let's see. Class, let's give it text center. No posts found. We save that. We're gonna format that as well. Okay, we still have an error. What's the issue? Oh, we don't have else. It is called empty. Sorry, I didn't remember that. Now if we... Okay, so here we go. So now we see no posts found. Let's give it text gray 400 to make it slightly darker. Okay, better. And let's give it also padding Y16 to give some height. Okay, good. As for the categories, we can leave this, but you get the idea. So we can use this for else to display an empty message right here. Again, have a look in the documentation. We're going to step by step use some of the directives, but not every directive will be necessary inside our project. So again, I recommend you to have a look in the documentation, find out more about what directives are available, and yeah, that's it. Now, let's talk about the components, and I'm going to show you also documentation from Laravel official docs regarding the component section, and I also recommend to have a look after this section is completed, the component section is completed in this tutorial. Components are reusable piece of code mostly related into UI, and the whole purpose of the components is that we don't repeat the code. We create one component, let's say a button component, and we use that button component in many places in our UI. So we will need post item component into multiple places. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create now a new component, post item component. PHP artisan make component, and let's call this post item. There are three types of components. One is class-based component, which means that there is a PHP class associated to a blade file. Second is view-only components, where we only have blade file. And third, inline components, where we only have PHP class. Now let's create class-based component. PHP artisan make component post item, we hit the enter, two files were created. One is under app view components post item. Let's open this. Second, under resources views components post item blade PHP. The naming is corresponding. Post item is has given the exact same name we gave to the component name, and the post item of the blade file is the dashed version. And this post item actually renders the components.post item. You can change this if you want. So you can move this post item file from components class into components folder into somewhere else, and you can do it like this. And typically the component with a class is necessary and required when you want to put some heavy logic inside your component, such as selecting data from the database or make some heavy manipulation on the data. So in this case, the class would be necessary. So for post item, I don't think class is actually necessary. So I'm going to delete this post item class, and I'm going to also delete this resource view components post item blade PHP. But instead, I'm going to regenerate the artisan command and provide --view, which means that I only want a view to be generated. So as you see, post item blade PHP was generated. Now let's go into dashboard, and this is the post item. So I'm going to actually copy this, and right here I'm going to use the component, but let's actually first put this here, format that nicely, and then we're going to use the component. When using the component, we should start this with X. So every component basically used with like an HTML tags, but with X prefix. So X dash post item, okay? And we are already using the component. Optionally, we can do like this. We can have this opening and closing tags. Both is going to work in this case because we don't have any posts. We don't see any kind of result right here. So let's do, let's open database Cedar. Let's uncomment this code and let's re-execute PHP artisan migrate fresh -- seed and refresh, re-authenticate, undefined variable post. Okay, where's that? Okay, we are using post variable right here, but we have to provide that post here as well. So to provide parameter to a post property, we need to use colon post and then the post variable here. So that post will be accepted as a post variable inside this post item. So if we are using a variable inside this post item component, which is called my post as an example, then there are two ways to provide that property. One way is my dash post, and second way is actually in the same way we are using with the camel case notation my post. Okay, because in our case we are actually using a post variable, so let's stick with post in the following way. So the post variable, so this post variable given into the post item component is going to be the following one. So we save, refresh, now everything is good, and data is actually outputted. So now we can call this as P, for example, okay, and then we can provide P right here. So that's going to also work. Now let's create one more component, in this case for categories, and this is going to be the component itself. Let's bring up the terminal and execute PHP artisan make component, and let's call the component categories, category or category tabs, category tabs. Okay, and I want this to be a class-based component, meaning I need PHP class as well as the blade file. Let's open this category tabs and let's work on right here. I'm going to open this post controller and I'm going to select, I'm going to take out this part, okay, from the post controller, and I'm going to put this in the constructor right here. And there are two ways to pass data from this category tabs class into the blade file. One is that we can define public properties inside here, and second is that we can do the variable declaration right here inside the categories, and when we render this view file, we can provide categories in the following way. So let's make sure we import these categories. So we start typing category get. Okay, cool. Now we are passing those categories inside these category tabs. Let's go into post controller. We're going to remove passing categories into dashboard, and let's go into dashboard and we're going to take out this part and we're going to use X category tabs. And in this case, the component X category tabs does not accept any kind of props. And the data inside these X category tabs, which is actually right now empty. Let's open this. We're going to paste this UL here. These data, the categories, are given from class, from category tabs component from the following way. So if I save this right now and refresh in the browser, we are going to see categories right here. And that's pretty cool. So we make the controller a little bit cleaner in the following way. If we go into category tabs, the second way is actually to define public properties, as I mentioned, and we can we actually don't need in this case to give anything into the categories as an argument. Third argument, every public property defined in this category tabs class are actually variables converted into variables into the following category tabs blade file. If we want to pass some extra data to the X category tabs component, we can provide it in the following way when we have class-based component. Let's say name equals Zura as an example. So we're doing this not for the project, but to learn something new. So we're providing name Zura. Now, if we go into category tabs, we can accept that name right here inside the constructor. Let's make this public string name. So now name is a required prop, and we're accepting that prop name, and that name variable is available inside category tabs. So what we can do is basically append name into every category name. So save, refresh. Now let's see, unresolved dependency resolving parameter. Okay. Let's go into dashboard. Okay, name. Okay, this is the thing. We don't need colon in this case. We just need name equals Zura, and I will explain why. So we need colon when we are binding a variable like we did right here. So we are binding a p as a variable, and we need to tell the component, tell Laravel to evaluate that variable using this colon. So I'm providing this colon and telling, hey Laravel, so because I have colon here, this is a variable. So evaluate the value and pass the value into a post variable. So in this case, if I leave a colon, I'm telling Laravel, hey Laravel, Zura is a variable, evaluate that, which is not actually correct, right? So that's why we don't need this colon. In this case, the Laravel will treat this as a string value and convert this into a name variable. And just like this, we have Zura appended to every category name. So this gives you possibility to add as many parameters to your class-based components as you want, and then you can simply define them as public properties right here. Okay, that's one thing I wanted to mention. Second thing are about slots. Let's say that we want to customize the default message, such as no categories. Let's say, okay, no categories or no categories found. So how we're going to do that? Let's go into category tabs. Anything what we put inside this opening and closing category component usage is going to be converted into a predefined variable called slot. And we can use that slot wherever we want. As an example, so we can use again for else here. We can use empty here and end for else here. So in this case, we can use that predefined variable called slot, and that slot will be everything whatever we put in between the opening and closing categories. So I'm saving this, undefined variable name. Okay, we don't have a name, so let's go ahead and remove this name. We deleted the name, and now because we have categories, actually we don't see any output here, but let's actually output this slot somewhere else. Now we see no categories, and that's also pretty cool. We also have named slots capabilities, which we don't need specifically in our project, but I encourage you to read the component section. So it's a pretty interesting and large section. Just below the blade directives, the components, we can see these slots right here, and you can have a look and you can find out how you can actually create named slots as well. And again, this is pretty interesting topic. So just have a look in the documentation on that. By the way, if you want to check my premium course, which is 24 hours of long, more than 300 videos, some written lessons, quizzes, challenges, lifetime access, and many more features, you can check it on my website, thecodeholic.com. And right here, I have very comprehensive curriculum, and you can check the component section. And I have dedicated 1 hour component section where you can find every single thing what you actually need about the components. So if this is something that interests you, you can check it on my website. Now let's work on the layout side a little bit. First, if we have a look in the browser, so we don't need dashboard right here. Also, the URL should not be dashboard. And also, I'm gonna replace this Laravel logo into something else. So let's start with the logo, and I'm gonna use Medium logo because I'm actually creating a clone of Medium. Let's actually try to find the PNG version. Okay, that's pretty cool. We can open this in the browser. And now I'm gonna save this into my home directory, heard, Laravel course. Let's go into public, and let's actually save this directly here. Logo SVG. Let's open VS Code, and we see logo SVG right here. Okay. Now let's go into layout and replace the logo. And the layout is under resources, views. And now let's talk a little bit about layouts and explore that in a more deep. So inside layouts, we have app blade PHP and guest blade PHP. Let's open app blade PHP and have a look. So we have this boilerplate HTML code, and we are outputting the app local. App local is actually whatever we have written inside .en file. That's it. So the local can be actually with in the following format or in the following format. And in this case, using str replace, we are replacing underscore with a dash. So if the format is this, we are replacing with the dashed version of it right here. So then we are outputting the application config name. And right here, our application name is Laravel. We can change this and call this Medium clone. But whenever we have space, we need double quotes. Now, our application name is going to be Medium clone. We can already check in the browser. Look at this. So right here, we see Medium clone. Okay, cool. Then down below, we are outputting CSS and JavaScript using Vite directive. So this is a directive. Directives have many different purposes, and one of them for Vite directive is to actually properly handle this. And now let's understand how this actually works. So if we save it and if we have a look in the browser, let's actually try to authenticate and then have a look in the browser. So right here in the following area, the files are included in the following way. So first, it is including the Vite client, something like this. This is a JavaScript, okay? And then after this, we have this link style sheet CSS. So then the following CSS is included, and then the following JS is included, okay? And this is done by Vite server. And Vite is what we have running on the first place. And this is a Node.js Vite server, which is typically responsible for hot reloading. When we change something, it is going to reload, or when we change some JS and CSS, it is going to perform the build and reload. Okay, and in this case, Vite is what is handling importing these CSS and JS. So if we stop the Vite server right now and refresh the page, look at this. So right here, something was changed. And that something is that we don't see Vite anymore. Instead, the CSS and the JavaScript are imported from the following place: build, assets, app, the hash name, and so on. If we have a look in folder build, assets, we see the following CSS and JS files, which are imported from here. If we check in the browser, let's refresh it, we see some styles are ruined. And that's because the build was performed initially when we created the application. After the build has been done, we modified our project, added more CSS classes into our project, and build has not been run since then. And those CSS classes which we used in our project are not in a final build of CSS file, what is available in the public build app CSS. Okay, as an example, we created post item component with its classes. We have a button, read more button right here, but those classes are not in a final build of this CSS, and that's why these styles are actually lost. However, if we execute npm run build, it is going to perform the build on the latest version of source code what we have. It is going to generate new CSS and JS files which have a new hashes right here, and if we check in the browser, everything is there, everything is up and running. And in the source code, if we refresh it, pay attention to the hash has been changed because now it's a different CSS and different JS, but it is actually working. Okay, but we need to have npm run vite server up and running, npm run dev, because when we are developing, actually we want the server to listen to every change what we make. And whenever we do this npm run dev, it is going to create the following hot file, and if that hot file exists, then the loading happens from the following URL, which is actually the location of our vite server. So this is where our vite server is actually running. Look at this. This is a vite development server that provides hot module replacement for your Laravel application. So I hope this makes sense. Actually, we started talking about layouts. Then we found out how this was actually working. Okay, great. Now, here is another directive. This is include directive. And the whole purpose of include directive is to include another blade file into the following location. So if we follow the following blade file, layouts navigation, this one, we see that it's a typical nav. It has a string attribute right here, which is Alpine.js, and we might talk about Alpine.js in later sections, but for now, you can just don't pay attention to this. You can skip that. Okay, so we are using other components such as X, application, logo, and this is a component which comes with Laravel Breeze. So this is just a logo, nothing else. Then down below we have this X navlink component, which is also a component which comes with Laravel Breeze. And look at this. So it also defines props. What props that specific component actually needs, and it needs active prop. So there are PHP directives as well, and using PHP and PHP, you basically define a typical PHP variables. And based on active, in this case, we define classes variable, which is then given into the following a tag. So attributes is another predefined variable which has a couple of methods, and one of them is to merge the existing classes into these classes. The class is what might be given into this navlink. So right here, we can actually give other classes. So in this case, as you see, we're providing href right here, which is something strange as well. And this is actually generating the route based on the name. So if we open web.php, we see right here a route which has name dashboard. That's it. Let's actually format this. Okay, so we have route with the name dashboard, and its corresponding URL is actually /dashboard. And using the following method, route method, we are actually generating route URL based on the following name. Then we have this active property right here, providing the request route is a dashboard, and dashboard again right here is a route name. So if request the route name is dashboard, then we're providing active to be true. That evaluation, remember, because the attribute has a colon in front of it, inside this component, Laravel evaluates that expression and gives the value to the attribute active. So this expression will evaluate either true or false. If the route is dashboard, it is true. If the route is not dashboard, it is going to be false. This also evaluates into a string, which is the corresponding URL of the following route. And just like this, look at this, if you mouse over, that's the Laravel extension gives you information that this actually generates the URL to a named route. And this determines if the road name matches a given pattern. So we actually don't need this dashboard, so this is something I'm going to remove. So I'm going to also remove this application logo, or maybe we should actually replace this with something else, and that something else is our image, what we just downloaded. It's going to be under image/logo svg, as I remember. So let's see in the browser, refresh